This is a new podcast from Alpha Business Media. Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your articles, your research, your notes, and really distill them down into the most important insights, giving you that shortcut to being truly well-informed. Today, we're embarking on, well, a pretty fascinating journey. We're focusing on a nation that truly stands at a crossroads, navigating these incredible forces of technological change. Our mission in this deep dive, to understand the future of work in Nepal as it races with the machines. And that phrase, racing with machines, it really conjures up quite a contrast, doesn't it? I mean, picture this. You've got an incredibly skilled Sherpa guide on Annapurna, using years, generations even, of practical knowledge, reading the terrain, the weather.
Right, the deep intuitive skill.
Exactly. And then maybe in an office in Kathmandu, you've got a young data scientist using AI to optimize that exact same trekking route. They're looking at predictive analytics, machine learning, calculating avalanche risks, and maybe offering personalized itineraries. This isn't science fiction. It feels like the reality Nepal is right on the edge of. Traditional know-how meeting cutting-edge tech.
hmm And Nepal's position here is quite unique. It's just recently graduated from being a least developed country to a lower middle income status. So it's facing this double challenge. You've got the classic development problems, infrastructure, poverty reduction, alongside this massive global technological wave, AI especially. And its GDP, around $40.91 billion in 2023, it's relatively small. That makes it, yes, vulnerable to shocks, but maybe also flexible, potentially agile enough for quite rapid change. So AI isn't just another tech trend for Nepal. It's potentially an existential threat to parts of its labor market, but also, and this is key, a unique chance to maybe leapfrog some older economic models, skip a step, move towards something more modern, sustainable. But it all hangs on the choices being made right now. Strategic decisions are critical.
Okay, so before we look too far ahead, let's get a clear picture of the present. A sober look at Nepal's current labor market. And it sounds, well, complex. You mentioned this two-speed economy. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, essentially you've got the service sector really driving GDP growth. It's about 51% now. But agriculture, even though its share of GDP has fallen to around 24.5%, still employs a huge chunk of the workforce, maybe 21.5% of people.
So lots of people working in a sector with lower economic output per person?
Precisely. That leads to low overall labor productivity, especially in those large rural parts of the economy, while the urban service sector grows faster.
It's a real disparity.
And that leads us, I suppose, to the structure of that employment. Informality seems like a huge issue.
It's massive. The statistics are quite startling. 62.2% of all employment is in the informal sector. And even broader than that, 84.6% of workers are classified as being in informal employment. That means no basic protections, think paid vacations, sick leave, Social Security, things many of us take for granted.
Wow, 84.6%. That's almost everyone. Is the government trying to tackle that? Yes. The government's 16th development plan actually sets a goal to reduce the share of the informal sector to 40%. It's a big ambition, but it shows they recognize the problem. And then there's this related concept of vulnerable employment. The World Bank data highlights this. We include self-employed people and unpaid family workers, often in agriculture or small family businesses. And here the numbers are incredibly high, especially for women. 91.2% of working women are in this vulnerable category. For men, it's still very high at 71.5%.
91.2% for women. That's staggering. And points to deeper issues, I imagine.
Absolutely. There's profound gender inequality baked into the labor market. Women's participation rate is much lower than men's, about 27.6% compared to 53.7%. And when women do work, they earn, on average, only about two-thirds of what men earn. Plus, they're barely represented in leadership roles, just 13.2%. So what's fascinating, or maybe alarming, here is how all this combines. High informality, widespread vulnerable employment, deep gender inequality. It creates an extremely fragile labor market. This isn't just background noise. It acts as a powerful amplifier for the potential shocks of automation.
An amplifier. How so?
Well, think about it. In a developed economy with strong social safety nets, if AI automates some jobs, there are often retraining programs, unemployment benefits, ways to cushion the blow. In Nepal, where most workers lack that safety net, widespread automation doesn't just mean job losses. It could mean economic collapse for families, for communities, real instability. And given that many women work in sectors like administration and services sectors, often flagged as high risk for automation, the AI revolution, if it's not managed very carefully, could actually worsen the gender gap significantly. It could push more women into poverty.
That really paints a stark picture of the stakes involved. It's not just about efficiency gains, it's about potential social upheaval.
Okay, so let's turn to those predictions about automation. What are bodies like the World Economic Forum, the WEF, saying? Which jobs are most under threat? They seem pretty clear that it's the roles with repetitive, routine, rules-based tasks, right? And globally, something like 41% of companies are expecting to actually reduce their workforce because of AI in the next 5 years. That's quite something. It is. And the WEF reports do identify specific high-risk professions. Clerical and administrative workers are right at the top. Think about data entry specialists. That's a function AI can now handle almost entirely. Administrative or executive secretaries. AI assistants are taking over scheduling, basic emails, that sort of thing.
Right, the everyday tasks.
Yeah, exactly. Accountants and bookkeepers, too. Smart software is automating reconciliation, reporting, routine calculations. Cashiers, both in banks and shops. Mobile banking, QR codes, self-checkouts are rapidly reducing the need for them. Even postal workers face challenges from automated sorting and logistics systems. It's quite broad.
So if we map those global trends onto Nepal's specific economy, where do you see the biggest immediate impacts? Finance and banking seems like an obvious place, even if adoption is maybe a bit cautious, like you said, due to older systems or maybe skills gaps.
Finance is definitely a key area. The global momentum towards automating tellers, operators, back-office processing is just undeniable. And the Paul Rostra Bank, the central bank, is actively encouraging digital payments, which basically accelerates this shift locally. So yes, banking is on the front line.
And what about trade and services? That employs a huge number of people in Nepal, nearly a quarter of workers, you said.
Yes, around 24% in service and sales. And this sector is vulnerable too. Think about e-commerce taking over from traditional retail salespeople. AI chatbots handling customer support queries instead of human agents. Automated systems managing warehouse inventory instead of clerks. It affects salespeople, consultants, warehouse staff.
And industry, manufacturing and such. Maybe less immediate impact?
Perhaps less immediate in some ways, but the long-term trend is clear. Robotization, automation of production lines. Over half, 58% of the WEF respondents saw this as a major trend. It will eventually impact Nepalese factories and workshops too. But there's a deeper consequence here, I think, beyond just the specific jobs. It's the potential washing out of entry-level and mid-skill roles.
What do you mean by washing out?
Well, for many young Nepalese, jobs like being a bank teller or an admin assistant are absolutely crucial first steps. They're the way into the formal economy. A chance to learn skills, build a career, climb the ladder. If automation removes those first few rungs, what happens? You risk polarizing the labor market. You end up with highly skilled AI specialists at the top, maybe some low-skilled manual jobs at the bottom that aren't easily automated yet, and a shrinking middle.
The middle class gets squeezed out.
Exactly. And that raises really important questions about social mobility, about long-term inequality in Nepal. Where do young people start? How do they progress?
That's a critical point and quite worrying. But okay, let's look at the other side of the coin, because technology isn't just about destruction, is it? It creates new things too. The WEF itself predicts something like 97 million new jobs globally by 2025, roles adapted to this new way of working alongside machines and algorithms.
Precisely. It's not just about loss. It's about transformation. And these new jobs, they demand different skills. Skills focused on working with AI, with data, with intelligent systems.
So what kinds of roles are we talking about?
Well, the high demand list includes AI and machine learning specialists, the people actually building and deploying the AI models. Then you have data scientists and analysts who are crucial for turning vast amounts of data into useful business insights. There are newer roles emerging too, like prompt engineers and AI trainers people who essentially teach and refine AI systems to get the results needed.
Interesting. So kind of like AI whisperers.
You could put it that way. Then there are AI product managers who figure out how to strategically use AI within a business, and AI ethics and safety specialists increasingly vital to make sure this powerful tech is used responsibly.
And this is where Nepal might have a real ace up its sleeve, isn't it? This booming IT outsourcing sector you mentioned earlier. This isn't just potential, it's something happening right now. The growth sounds phenomenal.
It really is. We're talking U.S. $515 million in IT service exports back in 2022. That was a 64% jump year on year. It's already contributing about 1.4% to Nepal's GDP.
And what's driving that?
It's largely driven by Nepal's youth.
Yeah.
You have this large pool of young, tech-savvy, English-speaking people who are also, frankly, cost-competitive on the global market. About 83.5% of the freelancers doing this kind of work are between 20 and 29 years old.
Wow, that's a young workforce.
Very. And the government sees the potential. They've designated IT and business process outsourcing, BPO, as priority export sectors.
Are there well-known Nepalese companies in this space?
Oh, yes. Companies like Cloud Factory, F1 Soft, Leapfrog, Verisk, they're already successful, serving international clients, creating thousands of good, high-paying jobs right there in Nepal. Plus, you have global platforms like Upwork and Fiverr that make it easier for individual Nepalese professionals to connect directly with clients worldwide. It's quite democratizing.
So connecting this back to the bigger picture, this IT boom isn't just a side story, it's central to Nepal's opportunity.
I think it's absolutely central. It represents a chance for that leapfrog we talked about. Unlike developed nations that might have huge old industries they need to transition, think heavy manufacturing, Nepal doesn't have that same burden. Its economic landscape is, in a way, cleaner. And you combine that with this demographic dividend, all these young, digitally literate people.
It lets them plug straight into the global digital economy.
Exactly. Potentially bypassing that whole 20th century heavy industrial phase that other countries went through. This isn't just about creating jobs anymore. It could be a fundamental shift, moving from exporting mainly low-skilled labor, which has been the pattern, to exporting high-value digital services. It could even trigger a kind of brain rebirth, where talented young people see a future in Nepal in these high-tech roles, rather than feeling they have to leave.
That's a really powerful vision, a potential game changer, but
Yeah.
making that leap hinges on having the right people with the right skills, doesn't it? Which brings us to education.
Absolutely critical. And Nepal's education system, historically, has faced some, well, fundamental challenges. Adult literacy rates aren't as high as they could be, and there's a significant digital divide. Access to reliable electricity, let alone internet, is still a major issue in many rural areas compared to urban centers.
Right, and if even rich countries are struggling to adapt their education systems quickly enough for AI, it must be an even bigger challenge for Nepal.
It is more acute, yes. The distribution of digital skills is very uneven. Basic digital literacy in cities might be double what it is in the countryside. And if you look at income, the wealthiest might have 9 times the digital literacy of the poorest. So without tackling these basic access and literacy issues, any effort to prepare for the AI economy risks becoming quite elitist, just benefiting a small segment.
That's a crucial equity point, but are there signs of progress? Are universities stepping up?
There are definitely beacons of hope. Kathmandu University, for instance, has been a real pioneer. They've launched 4-year undergraduate degrees specifically in B.Tech, in artificial intelligence, and BSc in data science.
So they're getting ahead of the curve.
Seems like it. Their curriculum looks pretty comprehensive, covering machine learning, deep learning, big data, natural language processing, computer vision, and importantly, they seem to emphasize project-based learning, which is key for practical skills.
What about Tribhuvan University? It's the biggest one, right?
It is the largest in the country. They have a strategic plan, Vision 2030, which talks about improving quality, boosting research, building stronger links with industry, and developing more market-oriented courses. Progress might be slower there just because of its sheer size and maybe bureaucratic inertia, but the intention to reform and become more relevant seems to be there.
So you have these pockets of excellence starting to emerge.
Yes. And what's really interesting here is the potential for a virtuous cycle, a kind of self-sustaining flywheel.
How would that work?
Well, you have these growing IT companies, like the outsourcing firms we mentioned. They desperately need skilled workers. Universities like KU start graduating people with those AI and data science skills. These graduates then fuel the growth of the IT sector, enabling those companies to take on more complex, higher-value projects. A stronger IT sector then creates more demand for talent. And crucially, it can provide feedback to the universities about what skills are really needed in the market.
Ah, so industry informs academia, which provides talent for industry.
Exactly. That feedback loop is vital for building a sustainable high-tech ecosystem, especially in a developing country context. Maximizing those links, internships, joint research projects, guest lecturers from industry, that's key to making it spin faster. But this raises an important question again, doesn't it? How do we make sure this positive cycle doesn't just create a two-tier system? Highly skilled tech specialists on one side and everyone else left behind.
Right, the digital divide issue again.
Yes. It's absolutely critical to improve general digital literacy across the whole country, starting right from school level, alongside training these high-end specialists. It has to be both.
A balanced approach. Okay, that makes sense for education. Let's shift focus now to the companies themselves, the private sector. How do Nepalese businesses, big and small, actually navigate this? How do they adapt and win? We can probably learn from different sectors already, right? Like the banks moving cautiously but steadily into digital versus the IT outsourcing guys who seem built on flexibility and global thinking.
Yeah, definitely lessons there. I think for any Nepalese company looking ahead, there's a kind of roadmap emerging. First and foremost, Investing in your people has to be the top priority. Remember that WEF stat, 77% of companies globally planning to retrain employees for AI. That should be the mindset in Nepal, too. Don't just think cut costs by automating jobs. Think upskill our existing workforce to work with the new tools.
So reskilling and upskilling first. What else?
Second, start small but scale smart. Businesses don't need to jump into building huge, complex AI systems from day one. They can begin with readily available, often low-cost generative AI tools, things like Gemini, ChatGPT. Use them for marketing copy, creating content, maybe analyzing sales data. Easy wins that free up human employees for more strategic, creative tasks.
Practical first steps. Makes sense.
And third, I'd say focus on augmentation, not just pure automation. How can AI enhance what your human workers do? Make them better, faster, more effective? Maybe AI analyzes customer data to give a salesperson deeper insights before a meeting? Or it handles the simple first-line customer support questions, freeing up human agents to deal with the really complex, sensitive problems where empathy matters? It's about human-AI collaboration.
Augmentation, not just replacement. I like that framing. But a lot of Nepal's economy isn't large corporations, right? It's thousands upon thousands of small and medium enterprises, SMEs. The small hotels, the craftspeople, the local shops, the farms, how do they get involved? They often lack the capital, the tech expertise.
That's an absolutely crucial point. Real economic transformation doesn't happen just because a few big banks or IT firms adopt AI. It happens when it becomes accessible and useful for the masses, for those SMEs. And historically, yes, cost and complexity were huge barriers. But what's exciting now is that many of these newer AI tools, especially the generative ones, are becoming much cheaper, much easier to use, cloud-based subscription models.
So a small hotel owner could potentially get an AI tool to help set prices dynamically, or a craft producer could use it to generate marketing posts for social media.
Exactly. Or a farmer could use an AI-powered app to get better, more localized weather forecasts or advice on crop diseases. The potential for boosting productivity at the SME level with these accessible tools is immense.
But they need to know these tools exist and how to use them.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
And this, I think, raises a really important question at the government or policy level. How do we actively promote the adoption of these affordable AI technologies among SMEs? It probably needs a mix of things: awareness campaigns, maybe targeted training programs, perhaps subsidies or support for adopting specific tools. Empowering the whole SME sector is arguably the key to unlocking broad-based productivity gains across the Nepalese economy.
Okay, let's try and sort of unpack all of this as we wrap up. It feels like the AI revolution is definitely coming from Nepal. It's inevitable. And it brings this duality, profound risks, especially given that fragile labor market, the informality, the inequality we discussed,
Significant risks.
but also these incredible opportunities driven by that dynamic young population, the booming IT sector, and at least some forward-thinking universities starting to adapt. Success, though, clearly isn't guaranteed. It sounds like it needs a really coordinated effort, like a Team Nepal approach.
That's a good way to put it. It requires the government to step up investing in digital infrastructure, creating smart regulations that encourage innovation but also protect people. It needs the education system to deliver on training talent at all levels, from basic digital literacy up to AI specialists. And needs the private sector, businesses big and small, to invest not just in the technology itself, but crucially invest in their people, in upskilling, all pulling in the same direction.
Synchronized strategies.
Yes. And stepping back one last time, if we connect this to the bigger picture, Nepal really is at a historical crossroads, a pivotal moment. It could choose to be a passive observer, just letting these global tech waves wash over it, which frankly risks worsening poverty and inequality. Or it could be proactive. It can try to actively shape its engagement with AI, seize this chance to build a truly 21st century economy, one that's modern, hopefully more sustainable, and definitely integrated into the global digital world. It's a profound choice.
A profound choice indeed. So what does all this mean for you listening in? The choice for Nepal, it seems, isn't whether to race with the machines, but how to race with them and hopefully win. And maybe think about this. What elements of Nepal's unique situation, its challenges and opportunities, do you think could offer lessons for other developing nations facing similar technological shifts? Or perhaps even for your own career path, as really all of us in some way are racing with the machines now. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the future of work in Nepal.